of course, I've run into more tech issues than I ever thought possible in my business of running an online business. But those are pretty manageable, but it's the fear of things, the emotions that come along with all of the ups and downs, and then the revenue ups and downs. Those are the bigger bumps.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a fantastic one. Our guest is the host of the Unapologetic Entrepreneur Podcast and the author of Why Not You? An Accidental Entrepreneur's Guide to Success. Amanda McKinney, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I am thrilled to be on your podcast.
Well, it is absolutely wonderful to have you, and I'm excited about getting into your thought leadership and how it might help our listeners. But before we get into all of it, please let us know a little bit about you and your career journey leading up to now.
Sure. So I was in the corporate world after I went through grad school and jumped into the corporate world, and I really thought that I would stay there. I had no aspirations to start my own business, which is why I say I work with accidental entrepreneurs now, because I feel like I stumbled into entrepreneurship and I know that feeling so well. And so I was in the corporate world and really thought I was going to climb that corporate ladder, stay in that, and, be a top executive one day. Like that was really the goal. And lo and behold, a few companies into my career, I was part of a layoff. So they laid me and my whole team off. And in that moment, I don't know if you've been laid off or anyone listening has been laid off, but immediately I thought, oh my gosh, I'm terrible. This company didn't want me. I was on the chopping block. And so there was a huge confidence hit there. But at the same time, I had in the back of my mind, as I was in the corporate world, I had hired consultants all the way through all of my experience. And I thought, that'll be cool to do that one day. But I just kind of thought it would be down the road. And then when I got laid off, I was like, I wonder if I should try to do this thing, which I just knew as being a consultant for corporate. And that's really what I thought I would do. And my educational background and my experience is all in marketing. And so I thought I could be a marketing consultant and I can work from home. This is before COVID. And I thought, oh my gosh, that would be just such a cool thing. And so my husband and I sat down, and your listeners will love this. We looked at the budget, can we actually do this? If I make $0 for a year, could we do it? Is kind of how we approached it. And we were like, let's give it a shot. Now we had to change things about our lifestyle, of course, but we wanted to see, let's see if this would work. Oh my gosh, Michael, I love being an entrepreneur. It is so hard, yet so rewarding. But the moment that I was able to be able to work from home and have that flexibility and time freedom was unbelievable. I never knew I wanted it, but that's what I fell in love with, was having the time freedom, having the flexibility, and really being in more control of a lot of different things. So that's how I ended up being an entrepreneur. So really stumbling into it one step at a time and realizing how much I love it. And of course, my business has evolved since I started it in 2017. And so it's seen many different evolutions, but that's really how I got into it, from the corporate world into entrepreneurship.
Wow. And I always love hearing the bumps, the big bumps along the way after you made the decision. You love it. And definitely we can hear that there's some challenge there, as I know all of our listeners, our listener right now, in fact, is thinking, yes, there are bumps.
There's so many.
Running your own business and figuring it out. I can certainly attest to that myself, but I'd love to hear those significant bumps that you went through?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, let's start the list. How long do we have, right? I feel like that's part of entrepreneurship. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up starting a podcast and writing a book and really being a champion of people who stumble into entrepreneurship. And I wanted to be more transparent. Now, I'm not saying people aren't transparent. We all are able to make the choice of what we want to share on social media and our emails and that sort of thing. And so I'm not trying to say that there's a right way or a wrong way to do it, but what I wanted to do is to say it is really hard, but if you really love it and you really want to do it, it's equally, if not more, rewarding. But it is hard. So I'm often talking about the bumps and the bruises along the way because I think everyone needs to hear them, because I had no idea how hard it was going to be. And part of me is grateful for not knowing how hard it was, because maybe I would have been too scared to actually go and try the thing. And the other part is I kind of wish I knew a little bit more. So the biggest bump at the very first was the unbelievable fear of what are other people going to think? Very specifically, the people who just laid me off. Right? Like I was so nervous about what are they going to think, and what are the people from like my friends and my family going to think about me starting a business. Like it was really tough to navigate that fear of what are other people going to think, as well as the fear of what if it doesn't work. So that was a really big one first and foremost. And then the other two, I would say over time, was that I have niched down a few different times and pivoted in my business. And every single one of those feels like a massive bump, like a huge valley that you are just walking through every time doing that, even though it's exciting, but it's also terrifying. And so that the emotions that come with that, and then the revenue ups and downs are the massive one that I would say in entrepreneurship. That's a huge bump, and they come and they go, and it's the thing that people told me those words, like be prepared for the ebbs and flows of revenue as an entrepreneur. And I was like, okay, I had no idea. That I thought like I could hear the words, but until experiencing it, that was a shocker, and it's a shocker every single time it goes up and down. So I would say those are the biggest ones, the biggest bumps that are kind of consistent throughout. Of course, I've run into more tech issues than I ever thought possible in my business of running an online business, but those are pretty manageable. But it's the fear of things, the emotions that come along with all of the ups and downs, and then the revenue ups and downs. Those are the bigger bumps.
Yeah, it's definitely resonates with me. I'm sure it does with our listener. And I think back to something you said, which was if you love it and you're really committed to doing it, that it will happen. Maybe not the way you think it's going to. You mentioned you pivoted, you changed niches or niche down. That happens. And I think I've seen so many examples. It's the only way you're not going to be successful is if you stop trying to do it. And it might take way longer, and it often does. But if you keep at it and you keep moving, you find a way. And I appreciate what you said as well about, like, had you known how challenging it was going to be, you probably wouldn't have done it. I feel the same way. Sometimes I look back and I go, I don't know if I could do that again.
Right.
That was difficult. I don't want to do that again. But, if we keep on climbing, there's new valleys to go through and rock faces to climb, and we just get to them and we figure it out from there. But looking back, it's like, just keep climbing. Don't go back down and have to do it again. But I think that's inspiration for our listener, is that wherever they're at in their business is really strong, is connecting with the love and the passion for the business, and being okay with reinventing yourself week by week, month by month, year by year, to figure out what that actually ends up looking like.
Right. Yeah, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying and equally as rewarding. It's so interesting how we can have these things happening that are both. And I also always like to recognize and share that sometimes people get into entrepreneurship, whether it feels like you're stumbling into it or you jumped head first, like whatever it feels like as you're going into it. And some people get into it and realize this is not for me. And so I always like to say, there is no shame in that either. I think it's awesome if you give it a shot and realize, you know what? Maybe I'm not cut out for this, or this isn't the season of life in which I can do this, because that's a big component too. And I never want to talk anyone out of entrepreneurship. That's not my goal. But I also think it's important to recognize, like, it's not for everyone. It is really difficult. Sure. And I had lunch with a friend recently, and she was like, Amanda, you make it look so easy, but I know it's not. And I was like, I make it look easy? Like, I definitely not. Maybe I need to share more about the bumps. And it was interesting how we can perceive that, right? And I do the same thing. I can look at you and be like, Michael's got it all together. He's got this podcast, this thriving business. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, like this is a tough road, right? But we perceive that everyone else has it figured out, where the reality is every single entrepreneur is figuring it out one step at a time. That's what I've learned.
Absolutely. And it goes back to the analogy of the mountain, right? It's, yes, it might look like I've climbed halfway up a mountain, but in my head, the mountain's way bigger perhaps than what people are seeing. And I'm on a different rock face than where I was at the beginning. The things that I challenged, that those big, awful rock faces that I had to climb 10 years ago, I'm climbing different ones now, and they're still challenging. They still come with their own sets of fears and worries and all that good stuff. So it is one of those things. It's so easy to look at others and say, oh, gee, look how easy they have it, or look how, they must be smarter, they must be better, they must be more something. And that's the saying, is we underestimate our own capabilities and overestimate the capabilities of others, which is a human condition, which unfortunately likely stops a lot of people. And it's unfortunate. And that's why listening to podcasts like these, it's great to listen to other people. You're not alone. This is what it looks like. The more people you connect with that have the same commitments and passions and, desire for the success, the better off I think people are. And I just wanted to mention something about the bit about quitting, right? It's like there is, whether you are in business at one point and maybe you're like, oh, this isn't working, I got to go get a job. If that's what you've got to do, that's just part of the journey. You might come back to this, or you might just say, I don't like that. I don't like having a business. I'd rather have a paycheck or whatever else that comes with because there's pros and cons to both journeys. And one does not know where the path leads. But I agree with you. It's often people might shame people for, oh, you quit. Oh, good chance. Oh, yeah, nice try. Whatever people say, forget about that. Do what's right for you, what feels right, your intuition. I believe that thoroughly. And I've had to take pivots myself all the way along since I was born, quite frankly. Been pivoting all the way along life. That's how it looks.
Yeah. And I think it's what you said is like, we can get in our head about what are other people going to think. And that's really what it comes down to. Because if we weren't worried about what other people were going to think about the quitting, we would just move forward with the decision that's best for us, right? Like if we know, and I am always the person that says, like, I am not above getting a job somewhere. Like if my business starts tanking, I'm not just going to like hope and pray that it works out. Hope is not a strategy. Right? That is not something that it's just going to magically get better. Now, what I do know about myself is that I love entrepreneurship. So it's very clear to me that I love this. Therefore, my why is really, really strong. So I know I love being my own boss, being in control of who I work with, when I work, and what I work on. That is the strong why. Now, in today's business for Amanda, it is coaching and podcasting, and I wrote this book, right? Like, these are the things I'm doing. But trust me when I say, like, if all things burnt down, I'd start another business. And in the meantime, I'd probably work at Target or Starbucks. Like, I always say this because I could clock in and I could clock out and I could side hustle my way to success by doing that. And so some people love having a backup plan and some people don't. I'm one that's like, that's always in the back of my mind. That's the plan. That's what I would do. And I would figure out what I wanted to do, whether it was a different type of coaching or opening a flower shop, or like, I don't know what it would be, but it would be something that I would probably have to work from the ground up, like side hustling and working somewhere else. But like, I know in my heart, I love being an entrepreneur. So if you find that you have that strong why, for whatever reason it is, and that true why, this is something that I ended up writing in the book, is your true why often seems very selfish because it's about you. Your passion is what's on your website. That's what you're doing and you're helping people with. But your why, you don't actually have to tell anyone. I just said mine of being in control of who I work with, what I work on, and when I work. Like, that's important to me. And I can do that as a coach, and I could do that as a flower store owner, right? It doesn't matter what I'm doing. My why is super, super strong. And I figured that out. I didn't know that on day one of my business, but I figured it out. And so when we know the why, we'll figure out the how.
That's right. You got it. I love that. Absolutely love that. You mentioned your book. I mentioned it at the beginning as well. Why not you? What had you write the book? And I'd like to, before I have a bunch more questions, but I'd like to know or have you share a little bit about the book and what our listeners would be getting out of it. And then we'll weave in some of these questions because I imagine some of it's going to be an overlap with your book.
Sure. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. As it's a labor of love. This is my first book, and everyone talks about it being like, you birthed this baby into this world. And I've never birthed a child into the world, but I feel like this book is real close to it because it was quite a labor of love. And it felt very different from anything else I've launched in my business, which is really an interesting and unique experience. And so I'm always very appreciative to anyone who is like, come talk about this thing. And so I wrote this book. I really thought I was going to write about marketing because, again, that's what my experience has been. And that's what I was doing at the time that I started writing this book is I was helping people. I didn't use the term accidental entrepreneur at that time. I actually uncovered that term for myself when I was writing the book. And I was helping people understand the concepts of marketing and doing it on their own. So that's what I really thought I was going to write the book about because that's what I did all day, every day, right? I was teaching people about marketing. Lo and behold, when you write a book, things change. And it led to a huge change in my business, a huge pivot. So at the time of this recording, I am like super in a pivot because it lasts a long time. And I almost want to have a new word for this because it's more than a pivot is what it feels like. But I wrote this book when I was sitting and I started writing because I joined a program. So I think it's important to like give some context. I joined a program thinking this is going to help me have structure to write this book because I want to get it done. And so I started writing, and the professor who teaches this course, he said, I want you to write the book that like I get to write this book, like the I get to book and not the I should write this book. And so there I was thinking I should write about marketing. This is what my whole audience is going to expect when they hear I'm writing a book. That's what they're going to expect, the marketing book. However, what I found every time I was coaching a client of mine, anytime I was working with someone, they would ask me a specific marketing question and I would respond with, why do you want to learn that specific tool? What is that going to do in your business? And I always went back to this, what are you trying to build? Because in the end, what my heart believes is I don't care if you use Instagram or Pinterest or TikTok or whatever when it comes to marketing, as long as you're building the business that really you want. And so I have this passion of like, what do you want? How do you define success? What is the business you want to create? And so I ended up writing this book that you get to create the compass for entrepreneurship for yourself. Everything is related to you. I'm sharing examples and I'm sharing the way in which to get to your compass. So I'm not telling you, this is what Amanda did, follow Amanda's path. I'm saying, here's how I figured out what success meant to me after years of chasing what other people told me it should be. And I want everyone who reads this book to understand what they want to create. And it's really a business that integrates into your life instead of taking it over. That's the person who's drawn to me. And so after reading the book, you have your compass that can guide you in all pivots of entrepreneurship. So it doesn't matter the industry, doesn't matter what you're doing, what you change in your business. This will guide you every step of the way.
I love it. And I think it's so interesting the way that you got to the book. And I can appreciate often in my own experience, people are focusing on the things that it's like the tactics of the business, like, oh, I need clients, so I'm going to do some marketing, or, and then we go deeper in marketing. It's, have a website, put on something on TikTok, where they haven't done the work on what are they building? Why are they building it? What's the life what is this going to build for their life? Why do they want to have a business like this? And I think if you do that without understanding those things, you get stuck. You have to do way more pivots than you would have, and also it fuels anything you do in marketing when you're really clear about the things that you've mentioned. And so it's an important step. And many people, I'd say the majority, 80-20 rule be an easy stat to give. 80% of the people haven't done it, and the 20% that do, we'll have to be very difficult to go and find the people that probably have done that, because they're going to be more successful looking at it, have the business that they want, doing the things, growing quickly, whatever the case may be, or how they define that success. But I love that. And it sounds like a book that is written from your heart, which is exciting as well. I'm sure it's a great read.
It really is. It's one of those that an interesting little caveat of what happened is I was presented with a very unique situation. So I had signed up for this program and knew I was going to write this book. I hadn't told my audience at all. I told my husband, he knew I was going to write this book, but no one really knew. I didn't really say anything at that time because I didn't know what it was going to be. And then lo and behold, one of our family members actually needed to be cared for. And so we moved one of the family members into our home. And during the 3 months where I wrote the first draft of this book, I was actually not only an entrepreneur running a business and a wife and a stepmom and a friend and all these things, I added the additional role of caregiver. My husband and I juggled that role for the 3 months. And so I was really presented with this incredible time constraint where I had to figure out what is the priority. And it was really interesting because number one, my business kept running, which was really awesome. Like I got to see this business that I had built continue to run, even though I had to take a significant time step back, if that makes sense. Like I couldn't do a lot of the things that I was used to doing. I did the necessary though. And so I knew what that was. The other part of it was I was really confronted with, we don't know how long this is going to be. We don't know how long we're going to have someone else living in our home and having all of these healthcare things. Like there's nurses coming in. There's all of these things that were kind of disrupting our day from our normal, right? And so I had a moment where I was sitting on the couch, the family members, sitting in a recliner next to me, taking a nap, and I'm trying to write 15 minutes at a time at this point. And I thought, if my business burnt down, what book would I write? Like I'm in this program. I'm going to try and write this book. Like what book would I write? And that's how I got to that. I'm writing the I get to book, not the I should book. And so I let go of the marketing expectation and what everyone else thought I was going to do. And I wrote the book, like you said, from my heart. This is the thing that if like you can take this book and run with it. I wish I had it when I started because there's so much information out there, which is lovely. When we go to Google and we type in the word entrepreneurship or how to write a business plan or whatever you're typing, there's a lot of information. And a lot of it is written, not all of it, but a lot of it is written and produced for people who step into entrepreneurship with that hat already on of like, I want to build this business. I'm going to do anything I can to make it work. But most of us, I shouldn't say most of us, a lot of us who feel that stumbling into entrepreneurship, this is especially true after COVID because of how much it changed the online space. So many of us don't resonate with that content of, I don't want to burn myself out creating this business. Like, I don't want to work 80 hours a week just so I don't have to work 40 for someone else, you know? And that's what happens if we're into that hustle mentality. And so this is a very different approach. It's not super unique. I'm not the first person that says, pay attention to your time or anything, but really it's just a different take on how to get going so that you can set up that foundation like you were talking about from a different perspective. And so what it really helps us do is to keep our mindset focused on what we want to do, because there's a lot of shoulds that come our way of like, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. And if we know what we want, we're less likely to fall into the shoulds.
So true. So true. Well, I'm excited for the book for our listener, and it's a lovely journey of you writing the book. And it gets the next question I would have is it comes back to something we talked about a little bit earlier was, you know, people make decisions to do things, and we talked a little bit about confidence, but as an entrepreneur, especially early on, it can be shaky, right? Mm-hmm. And so how did you find the confidence during uncertain times, even going through what you went through writing the book? Like it maybe the people wouldn't want the book. I mean, I'm sure you had all sorts of worries and fears about it.
Yes. You know, I love that you brought this up. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, and it's this idea of confidence. So when I first started my business, one of the things that I did is I within the first year or so ended up, once I knew I wanted to broaden out from corporations, I started this Facebook group. I don't have it anymore, but I started a Facebook group. And one of the questions is, what do you struggle with? What's your number one struggle? By the way, that's a great question to ask people, any clients that you're working with, like what's your number one struggle? You will learn so much from that question. And everyone who answered this question, I had thousands upon thousands of answers, and 90% of them said lack of confidence. This was fascinating to me as I was starting my business, and I thought, this is so interesting that everyone's really struggling to have this confidence. So you're not alone. Whoever is feeling this, like, please know that you are definitely not alone in that feeling of wanting confidence. So for several years, I've actually talked about confidence. The first name of my podcast had the word confidence in it. I've changed my podcast name since then, so it's not that anymore. But the whole thing about confidence, I really spoke into it. And I was like, okay, here's how to uncover your confidence. And I really leaned into that messaging. But after reflecting and doing so much research and so much thought about this, we cannot, as humans, please tell me if I'm wrong with this, like if anyone has any differing thoughts, but we are not going to have confidence before we take the action. Yet that's what we want. As an entrepreneur, we are like, I will do the thing once I feel confident. But when you were learning to walk, you didn't feel confident before you took that first step. You were just a child trying to figure it out one step at a time, you know, pulling yourself up, doing these things. Same thing with learning a new language, anything we've ever learned. There's no way we can feel confident before we take the action. Yet for some freaking reason in entrepreneurship, we're like, I'm going to wait until I feel confident. And we try so hard to feel confident. But what we really need is the courage to take the action before we feel confident, before we know what the outcome is. So what we really need is to tap into our courage to do things before we know the certainty. And then we will feel confident. It's like after you've practiced something, maybe you're learning a new skill, and you do it correctly for the first time, and that's when you feel confident to do it again. You don't feel confident before. So that's my take on confidence. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
I love it. I love it. And, I think it's often people forget about that, things holding you back, not doing something, especially solopreneurs. It's easy to get busy during the day doing what we are confident at doing, which is
right
in this industry, in the bookkeeping. It's like, I'm confident in doing.
Yes.
Can't even say it. Reconciliate. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, our listener knows what I'm trying to say. But It's like, do the work. Go to the grindstone, know how to do the bookkeeping, and that's a safe place to do that. The other
and thank you all. I'll say side note there. Thank you all for doing what you do, because us accidental entrepreneurs, the money side of things, the accounting side of things is terrifying to the rest of us. So thank you for doing what you do and being confident in it.
It's beautiful. And thank you. And yes, definitely our audience is your audience. Dream to have great bookkeeper to help them get things done, know that it's working. And especially if they're a profit first professional, you see the book on your shelf.
Exactly.
In the background, right? To actually put more profit in the bank and have it all done really well. And we're really blessed to have some really strong profit first professionals in our community doing that for many business owners out there. But this other side of it is, you're alone. You're. If I think of my children and what they're always such great teachers. They're not confident in everything. So that's how do they do things? Well, they have mom and dad there to help along the way, to sort of give them a bit of a bump. It's like, okay, jump off the dock. It's okay. Go to the taekwondo, try the new, go play the soccer, kick the ball, sure, get hit, whatever. We're pushing at the sidelines and we're there. We care deeply and we're there to help them progress in life. Where do we have that as an entrepreneur? Coaches and mentors and community. The other thing that's a real good lesson from kids, and this is also written up in very lots of research around this from Dr. Cialdini from his book, The Psychology of Persuasion, is that kids jumping off a dock with mom and dad is one thing. Put them on a dock full of their cohorts, their peers, jumping off a dock, and they'll be jumping off a dock way more than mom and dad can ever dream of having them jump off. So it's the sense of community, being with the people doing that we know, like, trust, and that are doing the things that we perhaps want to do, but maybe fear doing. Seeing them do it has an incredible impact on our ability to tap into that courage. And so it speaks to, the services that you do, right? Helping inspire, motivate, and hold accountable people that are trying to get somewhere, but as well the community of people. It's important for our listener to be in a community of people that are doing the things that they want to do, because that's a great way to tap into the courage when you see other people doing it and being successful doing it.
You nailed it. You nailed that completely, because usually as soon as I talk about the confidence and the courage thing, someone says, well, how did you have the courage? And the answer is, I had support. I had, and still have, and will always have, because I am very proactive with this, and I encourage everyone else to be as well, just like you are, is find the support you need. Because it's so hard to do this alone. Because I hear all the time, Amanda, I feel like I'm on an island. That is the phrase that more people say to me than anything else. It's like I feel all alone on this island. And it's because we're behind the computer screen thinking that we're the only ones struggling with whatever it is. And the answer is everyone is struggling. And chances are there's a whole group of people that are struggling with the exact same thing that you're struggling with. And they all feel alone and are looking for support as well. And so inside the book, I have a whole chapter on find your people. And I identified 5 groups of people that I would suggest that everyone has in their corner. And one of them is who I call your biz besties. And it's who you're referring to. It's other people who are running a business, because I have best friends, right, that I've had for a long time. I have friends and family who support me. They are so encouraging of me as a business owner. But Michael, I don't know about you, but I cannot call my best friend and be like, I'm having a technical issue with my email service. She would be like, I don't know how to help you. I'm sorry it's happening, but I don't know how to help you. Whereas I can call one of my biz besties and they'll say, give me your login, I'll figure it out. Like we can get in there together and we'll figure this out. That's the difference. We need both. They're both valuable, but we need those people who are also going down this entrepreneurship journey or whatever it is. Like if you're trying to start your business, if you're down the road and starting your business, if you're like, I want to go back to corporate, like find the people who are doing whatever you're doing, because that's going to be the most key point of support.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And so true. You know, I'd love to know, you've written a book, but I'm sure you've got other resources that our listener would get value from along the lines of what we've been talking about today. I'd love for you to share some of those things with our listener.
Well, thank you so much. So my website is amandamckinney.com, and I made it super easy. So you can just type in my name and go to my website. And I'm always adding new things. The reason I just give the blanket URL is because just like you, dear entrepreneur listening, things change in business. And so I'm always offering new and different things. And so my podcast is on there, the Unapologetic Entrepreneur. That's completely free. And you're already listening to a podcast. So just hop on over and listen to some more, because we all know I'm a podcast listener too. And so we can listen to a lot of them. So the podcast is a really good one. I have quite a few free resources on my website. So defining success is one of the things I mentioned earlier. And I have a free PDF on that because I believe that everyone needs to do this. And it took me way too long to do it. And once I realized I needed to do it, it even took too long after that. So this PDF, you can do it in 20 minutes. Isn't that amazing? You can define success on your own terms in 20 minutes. So that's probably one of my favorite things. And you also you said something about accountability earlier. And this is the first time I'm really talking about this on a podcast. So this is kind of fun. But I have really started to tap into, that is the thing I love to help people with, is accountability. Because so often you can learn from a digital course. You can learn from a podcast. You can learn a lot of different ways, but it's implementation that can be really hard to do on your own. And so I have quite a few things related to accountability on my website, and I plan to do some free resources as well and more on the podcast, but I do have some paid offerings that are related to accountability only, and they're super fun. I'm really enjoying it. So hopefully if that fits the bill for what someone needs, you can find me.
Beautiful. Well, I've been to the website. It's a beautifully done website.
Thank you.
Tons of resources on there, which I know our listener will get a lot out of it. I just know, the podcast looks great. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your guests that you have on the podcast, because just taking a look myself, it looks like a lot of great different entrepreneurs from all sorts of walks of life. Great place to get inspiration, I'm guessing, but I'd love to hear it from you.
Yeah, inspiration is one of the key components for sure. When I started the podcast, it was way more about how-to stuff, how to make reels on Instagram, right? But the more I realized, like, you can learn that anywhere. in a podcast is not really the easiest place to learn that. Like there's video that you can learn a lot of those things. It's more about understanding like what's in your way, what's the roadblock. And so what I really love doing is talking to people and hearing their success stories of how they navigated the roadblocks that were in the way of success. So that's typically what I'm interviewing people on. Now, sometimes that comes out of like, here are 3 tactical things that you can do in your copywriting. And there's other times that it's like, this is the mindset that we got to work through in order to actually write that email. And so it's both inspirational as well as tactical. And it's all related to building the business that you want. So I like to share as many stories as possible of other people, especially if they do something in a unique way. So for example, I love batching content. If no one's heard that before, it's like you write a lot of emails at once instead of writing them sporadically. Some people hate batching. So I love interviewing people who do things differently than me because I don't believe that my way is the only way to do anything. And so it's easy to slip into that as a podcast host is like, I know this is what works for sort of thing. And so interviewing other people is the way in which I make sure that that's not what I'm doing.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, this has been absolutely a fun interview with you, Amanda. And I love the book that you've written, your website, and some great knowledge for our listener today. And I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Michael. It has been such a pleasure talking to you.
Well, the pleasure is all ours. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.